Adelaide played host to the biggest grand final in Australia in 2025 as emotions ran high with it all on the line. On the show this week, the lads look at Chas Mostert's championship charge. We break down Feeney versus Wood, TV changes and so much more. We remember a true legend of Australian motorsport too in Alan Moffat. There's a classic BMW, memorable hits from the archive in our top 5, plus we celebrate the best of supercars in our end of season awards. Get around it. It's time now for The Undercut. This is The Undercut once again, proudly brought to you by Shell V-Power. Fuel the feeling with Shell V-Power 98, the premium fuel designed to clean and protect your engine. City Rural Insurance Brokers are back again this week with a classic car. This week, a BMW Super Tourer that's raced all over the world, but once again on the panel this week, two blokes who are super steerers in their own right. Welcome, James Moffat, Jack Perkins. Welcome back to The Undercut.
Noons. Thank you, Noons.
We've had a bit go on. Grand final, over and out. Fair to say, bit of drama in Adelaide on the streets in South Australia.
Yeah, who was going to predict that?
I think we did predict that, did we not? That there would be drama, and there was drama.
Yeah, and I thought it was excellent, to be honest. It was entertaining, went right down to the wire, and yeah, a lot of people that don't often talk about supercars are talking supercars, which is cool.
And the good thing is that they're still talking about supercars even after the end of the Adelaide Grand Final with those 3 races. Chas Mostert is the champion for 2025, and we feel for Brock Feeney, who did such a great job all year, but just came up short when it mattered most. We're going to talk about that on this episode of The Undercut. In the meantime, though, let's get stuck into it. Here are the burning questions. So many questions out of the Adelaide Grand Final in South Australia, the Supercars finale. My first question though, gents, is has the game changed? And by that I mean, has the level of racing, the aggression, finals footy type scenario come to supercars, and were some teams just not prepared for it?
Well, one team that was really prepared for it was Walkinshaw Andretti United. They played the finals, the new final system absolutely perfectly. So in answer to your question, yes, the game has changed, but it was known for all the teams and drivers at the start of the year. So full credit to the guys at WAU and Chas Mostert. They delivered when it mattered the most, and we now have a new series champion in Chas Mostert, and that number 1 will be adorned on his new Toyota Supra in 2026.
Jack, we talk about finals footy. It's harder, the tackling's more aggressive, what's on the line is more important and more valuable. It's very cutthroat. We're not used to that in motor racing, but I think there was a new bar set in Adelaide on how far you've got to go to get the job done in this format.
Yeah, and Moff touched on it. Walkinshaw's, they rose to the occasion. They rose to the finals occasion, and they turned it on when it mattered the most. And you've got to take your hats off to them. And the other thing that has become quite obvious now is the Adelaide Grand Final, or wherever the Grand Final is going to be, is as important, if not more important, than Bathurst. We often speak about the $1 part failures that cost you Bathurst. Hey, those things can now cost you the championship. It's one race when it matters most, and that's the Sunday of the last race of the year. And, that just rises the stakes massively for everyone involved in the game.
There's been some discussion about resetting the reset going into Adelaide to give the leader a bigger lead coming in, but it's one of those scenarios where every season's going to be different with how those races in the lead up to the grand final, how they roll out and who ends up where in the points. So that's one of those things that it might have impacted this year, but it might be different again next year. So you can't keep moving the rules to try to change what the scenarios might potentially be. But it's an interesting one nevertheless, and to see what tweaks supercars make to the finals format. I think they're going to be pretty minor, anything that does happen. The next one on our list is, well, this was a big one. Wood, Feeney. Who was at fault in that clash on Sunday in Adelaide? What's your take, gents? It's pretty hard to put a finger at each person or one person because they each had a role to play in this, whether it was a positive or a negative way.
Yeah, absolutely. And Jack has spoken about this on previous episodes. In situations like that, it takes 2 to tango. And certainly in that situation, it's easy to say to Brock Feeney, well, you knew what was at stake. You surely knew that Ryan Wood was going to have a go. But he's a racer as well. So you open the door and you move over, then you sort of set a bit of a precedent for yourself moving forward. But
But that's not the time to have that fight, though. Surely
No.
you do that earlier in the year when that potential scenario happens
look-
to establish yourself.
And, it's easy for us sitting behind the desk here now.
For sure.
Days after the event to analyse it and be experts. The fact is we had two guys racing hard at the start of the race. Woody was always going to have a go. He was being leveraged by the team, which, they did that absolutely spot on, to give Chaz the best chance to win the championship. And all the stuff that happened with Brock and his issue later in the race obviously unfolded, but that incident was obviously a bit of a tipping point. And the officials deemed Woody to be at fault, or more
at fault than
But if Brock had just opened the wheel slightly, who knows? They might have got around the corner, and the contact might have been avoidable. But it was. You could see a move like that happening, in my opinion.
Jack?
Yeah, I mean, ultimately the officials determined that Ryan Wood was at fault and they gave him a 15-second penalty. I personally think that was a bit harsh. The driver code of conduct and how they hand out these rules, there's no fine print. Like, it's the championship final. If the championship's at stake, we have to change how we adjudicate the penalty. I would love to have seen if that was the first race of the season, in the same corner, the same people at play without a championship on the line. Would that indeed have been another 15-second penalty? Because, like I said, I think it's too harsh.
Yeah, and just on that, Perks, I reckon at the start of the year we probably would have seen that let go.
Exactly.
To be honest, because the chat at the start of the year was,
Have at it.
There was a little bit more leniency in terms of the way things were being judged and adjudicated. And exactly to your point, Perks, you don't start changing how you judge things based on what's on the line, do you?
Yeah, that corner now goes into history even more on the Adelaide Street Circuit. Remember that's where Michael Schumacher and Damon Hill came together to decide the 1994 Formula One World Championship, and now it's played a critical part in how things unfolded for this year's Repco Supercars Championship, which guides us to the next question, which is connected but different, not quite the same. Was Ryan Wood lucky? Now, the preface to this is, was he lucky because Brock Feeney didn't get collected by a shell car, which was very close on the way through, whether it was Will Davison or Brodie Kostecki. My mind's foggy from all that's gone on in the aftermath. But if Brock gets taken out by that shell car on the way through, which was very close, the engine issue doesn't happen later in the day. So there's more heat on Ryan Wood. So is he lucky that Feeney and the shell car don't make contact and Feeney's not out on the spot?
I probably look at it a bit differently, Noons. I think Ryan Wood was incredibly unlucky. You could make a fair case that he could have well been fighting for the championship himself had he not had a rotten run of bad luck at Bathurst, the Gold Coast, that ultimately put him outside of the finals. He had issues at Sandown with a cross-threaded wheel nut. So I consider him actually quite unlucky in the whole situation.
Jack?
Yeah, I mean, look, again, ultimately, Noons, this is always going to present issues with this format when you've got people who are in the finals, as finalists, and then other people in the race. You can't have different sets of rules for everyone, and unfortunately, sometimes you're going to get the wrong end of the pineapple. And in this instance...
Which end of the pineapple would that be, though?
Yeah, the spiky end, I suppose. But
you can't eat that.
No, but look, I don't think there's any luck involved. It just is what it is. Like I said, if that accident happened at the start of the season, there wouldn't be the spotlight on it. I think the penalty potentially could have been different. So I guess what needs to be then asked of all of this driver code of conduct and how they race is consistency throughout the season. But that's a whole nother topic, Noons.
Yeah, I think my take on this is that he's lucky. So he's copped a fair amount online in the aftermath of what happened. But had the Brock Feeney engine issue not occurred because the Feeney car would have been out of the race because of the damage, I reckon more heat comes from fan base onto Ryan Wood because of that.
Yeah, well, I'm a bit funny with the social media stuff, Noons.
I'm not saying it's justified.
No, but 30 years ago, a bloke in a Red Bull shirt would have snotted him, and that's the difference. Now, they're writing things. So the game's changed, and I honestly think that the social media outlet and the outcry and everything, that's just part of being a sportsman in 2025. You've got to deal with that. You can choose to read it. You can choose to be... And like, I fire up at it. I write back to people who tell me I'm no good as I'm polishing a few of my trophies, Noons. But Not as many as I'd like. But that's an optional thing. And, you know, we all choose to play a part in social media. So you've then got to choose to be involved on both sides of that. And like I said, 30, 40 years ago, someone could have given you a black eye walking out of the track. So a couple of things on social media, certainly not as bad as a black eye.
Next one on our burning questions. Did the reaction tell another story? And by that we mean Ryan Walkinshaw's reaction's been heavily scrutinised in the aftermath of the Wood-Feeney contact on track. It was an instant celebration. There wasn't a, oh, what's happened here? There was an instant yes. Now, has that been taken too far by how people have viewed that? Is it just Ryan's level of passion and emotion coming through? Where do you sit on this thing? Because it's easy to see both sides of this.
Well, I think it is just his level of passion, which I think is a great thing to see, that you've got a team owner so heavily invested, both obviously financially, but emotionally as well. So no knock from me on that front. I think it's great to see. You want to, you know, we're always talking about, we want to see personality, emotion, all those sorts of things. Well, that was it in a nutshell there, wasn't it? So, you know, if you've got an issue with it, turn the TV off.
Yeah, and I agree. I mean, how often, and I am using a lot of analogies with other sports at the moment and getting criticised for it, but how often, you know, when you're cheering your AFL team, if the other team misses a goal, you cheer. It's a natural instinct. Now, if you ask Ryan Walkinshaw, you know, hey, would I do that a bit differently? Maybe, but, you know, your number one driver is now in a chance to win the championship because the opposition's taken out. You're not going to sit there and cry about it. You're happy because it puts your team in a good position. So, like Moff, I think that there's nothing much in all that, but I can accept that on some part of that it's not a great look, but it's the emotion, it's sport, it's what it does.
And that's what the finals has done to the scenario, where it makes everything more elevated, highlighted, more important. There's so much more at play under this format. The guy who had so much on the line but wasn't able to become the champion, Brock Feeney, did he win fans in Adelaide? And I would say categorically 1,000% yes. The way he carried himself in the aftermath, the way he was emotive. Again, it goes back to the previous point. We want our drivers, we want our teams to be passionate, emotional. For anyone who's not a supercars fan, who might have clicked on the TV and thought, what's all the fuss about, what's happening today? I'd liken it to watching the Olympics. There's sports that we would all not watch any other time of every 4 years, but you're caught by the human stories of the glorious success or the disastrous failure. The way he carried himself, what happened to him, I think that's going to win him more fans than winning the championship would have.
Yeah, well, I think he certainly, you know, won some emotion. You know, people felt that he deserved it, but it just goes to show that there's no guarantees. But I think, you know, Brock has certainly cemented himself as the number one driver in the championship this year. The amount of wins and poles and the dominance they showed, none of that is discredited in this situation. The only thing that's changed is his name's not on the championship winning trophy, but that doesn't take away any of your wins, it doesn't take away any of your previous performances, and it certainly doesn't devalue your product and your brand as a driver. But what I will say off the back of everything we've just spoken about is we've been asking for rivalries, you know. We've been speaking about what can we do to improve the sport, and we've got everything we've asked for, and it still seems as though there's some disappointment, but I think it's great. There's now a clear rivalry between the two teams here that are involved. There's a rivalry between, you know, Woody and Feeney. I just think there's no negative other than, you know, obviously Brock was pretty close to having his name on that championship trophy.
This sets up the redemption storyline, I guess, here, if you were looking at it from a script writing scenario. He's been so close to winning the championship a couple of years in a row now, hasn't quite got it done, has been close at Bathurst, hasn't quite got it done. The two things that matter most to a supercar driver are those two things. The redemption story here of, it's kind of like the journey's the reward, because there's no doubt he's going to win a championship somewhere. Look, we all said probably Glenn Seaton was going to win Bathurst and probably should, but didn't. And I think this is the thing that highlights it, James. You can't just go, next year, I'll get it next year. you just never know in life, in motor racing, and that's why it matters so much.
Yeah, and that's, I guess, probably the thing that will be hard for Brock to come to terms with over the summer is just the fact of the pure dominance that he had, and every other year, he's won the championship on Friday night at Adelaide convincingly. So you can't take away his achievements through the years, and I think just some of the commentary post-Adelaide from his peers in terms of they know exactly what he did this year, and there's probably a few of them that are fearing that if he can improve on what he did this year, he's going to be even better next year, which the fact is he doesn't really need to change anything for 2026 because he was by far the dominant driver in 2025, and it was quite phenomenal really when you consider the Gen 3 package and how that was introduced to make everything more even. To have a driver that was so dominant in the fashion that Brock was this year, mightily impressive.
You've segued very nicely here to our next question, and that is, what will Brock Feeney's bounce back look like next year? Now, Will Brown made a comment, I think it was in the press conference afterwards on Sunday, that we're all in trouble. Like, imagine how he's going to respond from being so close yet so far. Big change, Triple Eight. Easy to forget they're making the move to Ford because that was announced so long ago in 2025. But what's his bounce back look like here, Jack? Because I reckon if you thought the bounce back from losing in 24 to 25 was a great response, imagine what he's going to do next year.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to sort of picture him doing any better because he dominated this year. But I think that is going to be the big thing. The team needs to learn the new car and the engine, but obviously with the wind tunnel stuff that's happening and the engine program on the Ford side moving over to Triple Eight, I think that those sorts of things are going to fast track that sort of change for them. But look, it doesn't really matter if Brock wins every race next year because if he doesn't win the grand final, he might be in the same position. So, I think Brock's going to be dominant again next year. Take nothing away from him, but he and the team will need to make sure that they're dominant when it matters. And they probably look back at this year and think their endurance campaign could have been better, which it could have, and then obviously their grand final could have been better. So if they can improve those two areas, yeah, it's hard to think that anyone can beat them.
The new finals format's very much that you've got to perform when it matters most. We keep on making these comparisons to ball sports and particularly footy, but that's just kind of the way that it naturally is. You've got to win when it matters most, and for all those wins at all those tracks earlier in the year, they don't quite count when it matters most. But that is the opportunity for next year. But there's something that comes out of this year that might change the next few years. So the next question is, was that Chevrolet's last chance to win a Supercars championship for a while? So you take Triple Eight, you move them across to Ford. The lineup next year is Team 18, Premier, Erebus and Matchstone Racing. I could see Chev not winning the championship for at least 5 years.
I agree with you, Noon. So, if you go through that lineup, probably as it sits now, the driver that's most likely to deliver consistent results for Chevrolet is Anton De Pasquale, based off a strong sort of end to the year as well. That team and driver definitely had an upturn in performance, but MSR, they're unlikely to feature. You've got Jack LeBrock there who's returning back to there. They've got a rookie driver in Zach Bates, so he's going to take some time to find his feet. Erebus obviously have a young driver lineup. Cooper Murray has shown glimpses of speed in 2025, but needs to turn that speed into race results next year. And then you've got Premier, who have a big change in terms of two new drivers. Roland Dane coming back into the mix there as the team principal, but I can't see them really being a factor either.
Jack, there's been plenty of opportunities that Chev have been trying to find a star driver. They have been trying to shoehorn drivers out of contracts or have discussions. Matt Payne's now been linked to having had a serious discussion from GM and a serious offer to maybe even request to be released early from a contract at Groves. Chev and GM need to find a spearhead. If they don't have a spearhead team, they need a spearhead, bannerhead driver, and unless they're popping up out of contract, they're going to have to get the checkbook out and try to buy someone out of one somewhere, because otherwise, where's their star coming from to be their spearhead? Yeah,
and I think that's certainly become well known now to the industry. And I agree with what James was saying. I think team-wise, Erebus is probably their best chance at the moment. They won the championship in 2023, and the young driver lineup. If you'd had a star driver in there, like a Matt Payne or a Will Brown, Brodie Kostecki, then you'd be saying, hey, these guys are championship contenders. But each team has a bit of a weak link at the moment in the Chevy side, which is something they'll need to future-proof moving forward. But, like I said, I think Erebus are probably the best team poised there to deliver results for Chev. Team 18 not far behind. But Matt Stone, I'd put money on him winning the race at the Grand Prix for whatever reason.
Yeah,
They've got a secret sauce there. And I told that to Zach Bates. I'd be making sure you tighten the seatbelts at AGP because you could be in. So, it's going to be interesting to see what indeed moves they make in the background, driver and team-wise.
Yeah, they definitely are making moves where they can. Whether they can actually execute those moves is a whole nother matter, but it's interesting as to what Chevy can do in the next year or two. Next question, I think we've kind of covered this with some of the chat so far. Do we still like the final system? My answer is very easy. It's hell yes.
Yep.
Thoughts and pros and cons out of it all from Adelaide. We've talked about it. Now we've actually seen it in play for a year.
Yeah, completely positive from my point of view. Just the whole vibe that brought to Adelaide.
It made like every session feel like it mattered, every qualifying, every shootout, rather than just, we're just going to drive around and see who's on pole. There was genuine things to lose for people.
Yeah, I think not just obviously Adelaide, but I think the whole finals concept from really that first practice session on the Gold Coast. The feel about the whole concept was positive to me. It really was an upturn in terms of it created more storylines and certainly being at Adelaide for that grand final event, just the vibe around the town, people talking about it in the pubs, and it was just fantastic. So for me, no negatives, and everybody knew what was in place before it started. So just get on with it and embrace it because it's been a positive for the sport.
And the deal was announced in Adelaide that's been locked in for another 9 years. 2034 this is going to go through till, and part of that will be this format, final system, Adelaide hosting the grand final. It's not changing anytime soon, so there's no point complaining about it or demanding it be changed or such and such is an unfair champion. That is the format, that is the structure, that's how it's going to be, so race to it.
Yeah, it's a yes from me. I loved it. The alternative scenario, if you look at, imagine if Bathurst was a dry race and no finals. There would be no one talking about supercars because the dry race was probably going to be dominated by Red Bull. Brock Feeney would have won the championship by about Saturday in Gold Coast. And then people would have gone to Adelaide for ACDC, and that would have been about it. So,
and Lenny Kravitz as well.
And he was
Speedway.
He was in Mildura a week before Noons, but I just think, without the finals and without that wet Bathurst, it could have been a not as positive situation for supercars. The fact that we're all talking about it, it's ace. So yes.
It would have been a real snoozer without it.
Yeah, and it takes the sport to the mainstream in a way that it would probably otherwise struggle to do so. And mainstream media coverage and attention is such a massive element. Next question out of all this is a television-flavoured question from the end of 2025. Was Adelaide Neil Crompton's full-time commentary farewell? Because from all reports, everything we're hearing around the paddock, everything we've seen and heard, it would appear to be the case with what supercars want to do with television moving forward, mixing up the lineup, mixture of talent, mixture of people, different people in different days even possibly. It would appear that was his last call as the full-time supercars caller. Whether he continues in another role, part-time analyst, commentator, it remains unclear at the moment. But I thought it was something that we really should touch on here because if that was the end of an era, it's sad that it kind of wasn't able to be marked for whatever reason.
Yeah, Noons, you're probably as best placed to comment on that as anybody, but for me, Neil Crompton lifted the standard of Australian motorsport broadcast. So if that was Neil's last full-time role as a commentator, he sets a benchmark that will be incredibly hard for people to follow behind him. But it won't be the same without him if he's not there. I sincerely hope that's not the case. And if it's not in a full-time capacity, then I do hope that the sport can find a way to still have him involved in some capacity in the broadcast because he's too knowledgeable to be left on the sidelines.
We saw this with Mark Larkham a few years ago, Jack, where there was a decision made for Mark not to be in the broadcast, and it was the fans that were outraged and basically helped Elevate Supercars to go, hey, bring him back. Do you see this as being something that fans can jump on board with and make their voices heard and make a change? But it feels like there's change in the winds regardless at Supercars. But there's probably a way that this could be done of how this would evolve and roll out. That it's, I mean, look, not every race driver gets the opportunity to know that it's their last full-time race or their last Bathurst or whatever it might be. But it's sort of the same for someone who's been part of the furniture for so long, that if that was it, I mean, it would have been a nice thing for that pit lane to be out there, like they were for James Courtney and Will Davison and Nick Percat. Same scenario. He's in the Hall of Fame for a reason. His legacy's huge. His contribution's massive. And that if that's it and he just disappears off into the ether off to the left of screen, it's a very sad scenario.
Yeah, I guess, you know, if that was Neil's last, gig commentating, it is a shame that there wasn't, a bigger fuss about that. Like, for all the reasons you both said, he's been a stalwart of the Supercars commentary lineup and has done a fantastic job. I guess, everyone knows nothing's forever, and being a big cricket fan, I often thought, what's going to happen to that famous Channel 9 commentary team of Bill Laurie and Chip Alley and Tony Gregg, and then all of a sudden you get new people in and you still watch the game and it's just as good as it used to be. So there's certainly a chance for new blood to come through with a mixture of the old stuff. I love it when they used to still drag Bill Laurie out for the Melbourne Test. For the Boxing Day Test, and that's the same sort of thing that you could do with guys that are finishing up in Supercars. Keep them involved. They've got a chapter in the the book of the business, and they deserve to be part of that for as long as they can be, and they add value, that's for sure.
Yeah, life evolves and life does move on, but if that was it, it's been an amazing knock by Neil Crompton. I think we did the numbers on this, 380-odd championship rounds that he's been part of the broadcast team for, which is more than anyone's ever driven in the history of the championship, such as its amazing number and achievement. Last one here in the burning question, actually the second last question, is Adelaide now the biggest event in Australia? Big call, but consider this, gents. So 285,000 total people over 4 days, 102,000 on Sunday. It's locked in till 2034. Final rounds of all the support categories. There's Formula One cars, there's drifting and drags, speed comparos, a 40 years of Adelaide tribute, the Speedway, the Stadium Supercross, the Freestyle Motocross, 2 big concert stages with 2 huge shows, caravanning, camping, glamping and off-road show, purpose-built four-wheel drive track if you didn't catch that there over the weekend, family area, pub with live music, lots of activations, entertainment, Defence Force activations, we saw some of the images on screen there, roulettes and a freaking F-35A of all things as well. Track to Town as part of it added this year. For value for money, for stuff that's on, you can't go and see it all in 4 days because there's so much stuff happening. Those numbers are massive. It's an incredible event that hard to stack anything up next to it in any sport.
No, with what you just rolled out there.
Can you argue against it?
It's very hard to argue against it, and it just shows the power of a government promoted event. Not only is the event fantastic, but it is presented to within an inch of its life. The presentation is absolutely spot on, from the way the circuit is presented, I should say, to the grandstands, to the mesh banners that are lined around the circuit. So it's a fantastic event. There is no question about that. The vibe that it generates within, I guess, not only the motorsport industry, but Adelaide as a whole. It's fantastic to be a part of as a competitor. I know that much, and something that I don't take for granted. I actually said to somebody over the weekend, I guess for many years we always associated it with the start of the year, start of the championship, and it sort of felt like you could never imagine that event being anything but the start of the championship. But since it's returned in its capacity at the end of the year, I actually can't
imagine going back.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So what a fantastic way to end the year, and the grand final set up, as we've highlighted and spoken about on the show, is just taking it to another level.
But it makes it hard, Jack. Where do they go next year? How do you make it any better?
Yeah, it's look, Moff nailed it. It starts with the government, Premier Malinowskis.
The only one to ever get a cheer on a podium.
Yes, and especially from the Labor side, Noons. But he has done a tremendous job. If it wasn't for him, the event, first of all, wouldn't be going. So that's a big tick. But yeah, everything you've touched on, they have a South Australian Motorsport Board. Now, no other state or territory has a motorsport board. So that's an important part of it all, because they do a proper job, and the word proper is very true to the Adelaide 500, the Adelaide Grand Final now, because everything's done proper. Hats off to everyone involved. It's a tremendous event, and I'm not sure it can get any better.
Any event that gets Larry back behind the wheel as well has got to be a good one as well.
I'll tell you what, you mentioned those F1 cars, but it wasn't just the fact that it was F1 cars, it was F1 cars with proper engines in them, V10s. How good were they?
Yeah,
that was just unreal.
And proper guy. I mean, David Coulthard, former Formula One driver, two-time Australian Grand Prix winner at Albert Park. Scott Speed was nice to see.
And kudos to them as well. They even went around in the wet.
They did.
When it was raining, I thought they'll definitely park those things, but they threw the wets on and still went around. That was awesome.
Did you ever see Scott Speed not in his race suit? He was walking around on the Supercars race grid wearing his race suit, and it got pointed out to me that someone needed to tell him to undo the waist of it because it was covering his name. So he's walking around on the grid. No one could actually see who he was, but anyway, good to see him there.
No, he's a great dude. Actually, he's Will Davison's teammate in British F3 back in the day. That's going back a long way in the files. One last one in our burning questions, and it's an Adelaide-specific track question. What can be done about Turn 8? Now, it is the fearful corner. It is the bannerhead corner of the Adelaide Street Circuit, but we're getting big delays with those concrete blocks being moved back. Is there something we can do about that corner? Safer barriers, something we're seeing support races cut short. Obviously, we need the wall to give for the energy that goes into it when a car hits it, but what can we do to try to tighten this all up a bit?
Yeah, it's hard, isn't it? I think I mentioned it to Mark Scaife, actually, who's been involved with a bit of the circuit safety stuff at previous street tracks. But, something has to be done. The corner itself's awesome. That's not the issue. It's, when you crash and you do the damage, whether they can have a B-double there ready to go and just lift up a whole length of wall and just replace it or something, or, what do you reckon, Moff?
But for me, first and foremost, I think Turn 8 is almost the character of the Adelaide Street track. So
don't play with the corner, just play the bits around it.
Yes, yeah.
It can't be changed because you touched on it perfectly, Noons. It's fearful. But that's, as a driver, what is rewarding, because there's the ultimate consequence, risk versus reward, which you need in our sport. There's not enough corners in Australian motorsport like Turn 8 at Adelaide. But I was quite interested to see this year it seemed like the barriers were moving more so than in years gone by, which was then creating the delays and or red flags to sessions. So, there'll be more smarter people in the industry than me to be able to come up with a solution to that. But that's the issue at the moment, is the fact that when a car does make contact with that barrier on the outside, that they're moving too much and creating, unsafe angles, if you like, to not be repaired. So, we need to sort of, as a, I'm sure this is not new to anybody, but whether it's the South Australian Motorsport Board or whoever needs to put the circuit together, we need to come up with a better solution. But certainly this year, it was more of an issue than it has been in past years, because, let's face it, we've seen plenty of accidents over the years there without the delays that we saw in 2025.
I think that's something that they'll definitely be looking at in their post-event review of how that all unfolds. But as always here on The Undercut, there's always a pile of burning questions. There's always as many answers as we can give you as well. But there's plenty to talk about after the Adelaide Grand Final, that's for sure.
I was certainly not born with a steering wheel in my hand. I learned in my teenage years that I had a fairly high mechanical aptitude and got into overhauling an old Ford when I was 16. I won't tell you what year, that will be too much for the date line. But it wasn't until I came to Australia and really saw the races at Sandown and got hipped up and started asking myself what I was going to do with myself. So I was 22 at the time before I started driving. I wish now I'd started much earlier, but we're not all Einsteins when it comes to our career paths. But those 4 years, 18 through to 22, I wish I had behind the wheel now, but we can't do everything perfectly. I can recall 17 weekends in a row with the Mustang. Now that is extremely hard work. Today, the professional teams wouldn't do 17 races in the whole year. So it was tough going. Of the 100 wins I had in that car, I can recall that only 2 of them were actually gimmies, where all I had to do was drive it. So 98 times it was get the whip out, and there was always someone prepared to rip that flag away from me. The championship has always been tough in Australia. That's what's made it so popular with everybody. If it was easy, everybody'd be doing it, I suppose. Overall, it's more important to win Bathurst, but from a personal point of view, it was something that I had always set. I wanted to become an Australian Touring Car Champion, and that was really what was my existence from one month to the other. But Bathurst was always on the horizon, and because of the significance of that race, everything you did all year was a preparation for Bathurst one way or another anyway.
Alan Moffat there, and that vision courtesy of Greg Miles. Great to have a look back at that. And James, we're just talking on the set here. That's about 94, 95, judging by the TUI sticker on the Synovus car in the background there, and the denim shirts, very mid-90s as well. But yeah. Great memories, some of those beautiful images as well. But I guess the last few weeks, I mean, it all happened on the day we're at Mallala, weren't we, for the Trico Trans Am series. And in the week or so that follows, I guess the level of tributes that were paid, I mean, a couple of minutes on the nightly news, absolute proof and reminder that your dad transcended the sport. He was bigger and better than just being in the motor racing column. He was big ticket, that's for sure. Yeah,
that's a very nice way to put it, Noon. So, yeah, the couple of weeks since his passing, there's been a lot of people that have messaged or spoken that have been very kind. But yeah, it's sort of, I guess, really driven home the impact he had on Australian motor racing.
We're trying to find the right word. I mean, legend gets bandied around a lot in motor racing and sport. Icon's probably the next level up from legend if we were putting it on a scale. Yeah, it's still not quite right though. I'm going with giant. I think that's probably the next level up from icon and legend. I mean, there's no other way to view it. The achievements on track. I mean, a lot of this has been said over the last few weeks and over previous years, but look at those brands on some of those cars. I mean, anyone that could get sponsored by a bank is a legend. I mean, normally you go to the bank asking them to loan you money, but they sponsored him. How good?
I think I know what he's talking about here too, James. Is this took my mind off the job?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think, Noons, everything you've said there is right. I mean, there won't be another Alan Moffat. The legacy that leaves, not only with Australian motorsport, but just Australian sport in general. You know, people resonated with Moffat, Brock, those household names, and you know, they're just great memories. Even looking back at this stuff here. You know, it's just such an iconic name, and the legacy, you know, will never be filled.
4 Bathurst wins, 4 Australian Touring Car Championships, but when you hone in, the 70s was an Alan Moffat era. That's when his 4 Bathursts all come in the space of 8 years, the famous 1, 2, 3 of the 4 touring car titles, the Sports Sedan Championship in the Monza, the Sebring 12 Hour. I mean, everyone forgets about that, James, in 75. I mean, that's a major American enduro race, and go and look at the photos. There he is with the winning car in the aftermath of that win.
Yeah, and we were talking about this the other day, Noons. He actually wasn't, not many people probably would realise with that Sebring win, he wasn't actually meant to drive that car, but it was Ronnie Peterson, who was a Formula 1 driver at the time. He got injured and couldn't drive the car, and through a connection in Ford, believe it or not, Dad got recommended to drive in place of Ronnie Peterson, and went on to win the Sebring 12 Hour. So, yeah, some great stories that have resurfaced. And you talk about the bank. Well, I'm sure he wouldn't be unhappy for me to tell this story now. But when that ANZ sponsorship ended for him, the managing director for ANZ, it was in Collins Street in Melbourne. asked him to come into the office and delivered the bad news for him. But in delivering the bad news that the sponsorship wouldn't be continuing, he wrote Dad a cheque for $300,000 in 1990 as a sort of a thank you parting gift. Not bad in 1990 to get we're not going to continue the sponsorship with you, but here's a cheque for $300,000 just to sort of keep you going for the upcoming year. So
it's a good story. I need to get a new bank manager, Cliff.
Don't we all?
No one's ever done that to me. I've gone in.
Is he still at the bank?
If that's his bad news, I'd love to know what his good news was anytime he spoke there. But, I mean, you told the story here, the last show that we were on, which was filmed just before the weekend of his passing, going for a ride in the Synovus car around the Yuyangs and that sort of stuff. I mean, although he retired from racing in 1989, he did that Fuji race that he won with Klaus Niedwitz. He then actually did a little Macau race the weekend after, I think it was, which isn't probably as well remembered. But he still drove. He still got behind the wheel. I think there was some imagery we found the other day at the office of him driving one of the Sierras at the Bathurst Media Day in, I think, 92.
Yep.
You know, he ran that Falcon down at the Yuyangs. He still got behind the wheel. He just didn't go and race.
Yeah, and he did those speed comparison tests at the Grand Prix with Jack's dad Larry involved for B&W, and you know, there was a bit of a Castrol connection there. So yeah, I suppose if I was able to go, you know, do anything, it would be to sort of go back in time and, you know, witness what the 70s and you know, some of the cars he had, and just.
And this is the Monza. This is in the Malvern Road workshop, where, you know, the Moffat assaults on Bathurst and the championship. It's where they all came from.
Yeah, it's crazy for me to think now with, you know, I guess how race teams operate in the suburbs they operate, you know, in big factories in Dandenong or Campbellfield, or, you know, the outer suburbs of Metro Melbourne, if you like. And Dad's workshop for all those years was in downtown Toorak, you know. So yeah, 711 Malvern Road. A lot of campaigns came out of that workshop, and I spent, you know, so many hours in that workshop as a young kid. You know, one day dreaming to race at Bathurst, I probably wore the gearboxes out in the Sierras, sitting up on stands, pretending that I was doing laps of Bathurst. Surprised they made it to the grid sometimes. So, but that's just the strength of a Hollinger gearbox. You know, they were could even withstand what I was doing to them, you know, in the workshop.
He's going to be honoured next week in Melbourne at the Melbourne Town Hall on Tuesday with a state memorial, which is a fitting farewell. Jack, just quickly for you and James, you've been friends for a long time. The Moffats and the Perkinses have a lot of great history together. What's your favourite Alan Moffat moment from over the years? Maybe it's not one from on the racetrack, maybe it's just from you know, knocking around in between races, or, you know, with this bloke over the years.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sort of thankful of all of them. There's so many. We've grown up as kids, and I always called Alan Mr. Moffat.
As was big on his manners, wasn't he?
Yeah, and you know, and that's a great memory in itself, you know. And he taught my sister to drive on the road with your headlights on all the time. And there's so many of them. I love the ANZ story. I remember the Coke story. He told us when he never had and we've got these Cokes here to pay tribute, but he told us he had the sponsorship, but it was never firmed up with a contract. And one time he decided to ring him up and see if we could get a contract, and that led to them saying, shut it down, we don't want to have a sponsorship arrangement. And there's, you know, he told me once about Fatty Gagan ripping the gear lever off, but couldn't tell the story because he had his stutter. And it took him about 10 minutes to explain the gear lever had broken off in the car. And even when he used to tell us that he had two different Sierras, one was left-hand drive and right-hand drive, and he'd just pick and choose which track suited to be on the other side of the car. Yeah. There's just so many stories. I'm just
poor old Greg Hansford could get the, you know,
get the other one he didn't want. Yeah. But yeah, there's just too many stories. You know, it's just like you know, I got to see a side of Alan Moffat that not many people would have on a personal side. So
it's an amazing legacy, and he was very worldly in his thinking. He was very big picture, and he set the tone for what we all enjoy to this very day. So, in the finest traditions of the Coca-Cola Mustang and plenty of Cokes consumed by Alan George over the years, this is to you, Alan Moffat.
Oh, cheers.
Cheers. We got Jack a 0 because, you know,
sugar-free.
Sugar-free.
Cheers, nerds.
Best way to be. Cheers to you.
Good on you, mate.
Here's to you, Alan George.
Cheers.
Trevor, tell me about your BMW Super Tourer, because this is a car that's had a lot of different looks over the years.
What a cool thing, hey? You know, Paul Morris rang me yesterday about something else, but it was the car he drove here, I think in '94. In the original logbook is the Diet Coke car here. So, but originally it was Johnny Turcotto's car at the World Cup in '93 at Monza. So yeah, it's got a great history. Been to Bathurst and everything. Like, it's just such a fantastic car.
How did you come to get your hands on this car? Because you drove Super Tourers in period with Bob Holden's cars and Brad Jones's Audis, but how did you come to get this one in your hands?
I'd been scouting for a while, and Nigel Barclay in New Zealand, who's quite in touch because in New Zealand there's so many of there. I was there one time for a Michelin activity, and I said, "Have you found me a car yet?" And he goes, "How about this?" And there was a photo of it, and it's a car that had been in New Zealand with Dale Chapman, Dennis and Dale, and they wanted to get out of one, and I just said, "That's me." So I just jumped straight into it. This is a couple of years ago now.
Tell me what these things are like to drive. I mean, they're an early 90s car. The Super Tourer has developed a long way from these cars, but it looks like a pile of fun.
It is just, honestly, it's a hoot. It's busy and like it's a real race car. So it's, you know, it's sharp and you know, it's got good performance. You can make some adjustments. And no, look, it's fantastic. As you know, I had Macaulay down here giving me a bit of a hand. And those young guys, they seem to have more time than me in the corner and all that sort of stuff. I'm pretty busy getting in there and getting it all sorted out. And they just do it, you know, standing on their ear. So but it's good.
The 2-litre Super Touring era pretty much lasted the best part of a decade. The cars got so technical, the budgets were massive, both here and around the world. And you were involved in all that from the perspective of Michelin, an amazing era of racing.
I mean, back in those days, I'm so fortunate to have almost entered my Michelin, you know, apprenticeship back in those days. And Super Touring was at the highest level, and we had confidential tyres, and we were bringing different tyres at every round and putting different tyres on the left and the right. And honestly, it was electric. The atmosphere was fantastic. And you know, you talk to Paul Morris and Brad and all those guys that drove on confidential tyres, and they just said it was like bolting on speed. It was incredible. Yes, so it was a fantastic time for me to be involved, and I was lucky enough to drive a couple of cars, I think in '98, and it was just, it's amazing.
Tell me about under the hood of this thing. Is this the sort of car that you could pretty much run with you and a couple of mates at an event like the Winton Festival of Speed?
Look, I think the car had a 20-year history in New Zealand, and we've, you know, had to do a bit of work just getting up to speed with it. But now that it's like it is, I think it's relatively cost-effective to run. They're strong. They got a really strong gearbox and everything in them. So I think, my plan is just to have a bit of fun with it here and there, bring it out 2 or 3 times a year. I might send it to Europe and do a little bit of stuff. I don't know. I'll just see. But I think it's a great thing.
2-litre cars now becoming historically eligible in terms of their era. What would you put this car back to? You've kind of got a later body kit with the 93 livery. What's the ultimate spec and livery that you would put this car back to down the track?
Look, I think the spec that it's in is a 95 spec, so the aero package is 95, but I just think that classic BMW factory Warsteiner Fina, you know, with Winkelhock and Soper and Turcotto and, like, you know, their names etched in history with BMW. That's why I want to respect the history of the car from Monza World Cup, but run it just with that little bit of aero on it. Yeah, I think it looks fantastic.
Is there any chance that you would ever put anything other than a Michelin set of tyres on this car?
Well, probably not.
He's a good fellow, Trevor Schumacher. He loves that BMW. A big thanks too to City Rural Insurance Brokers for their support of the Undercut this year. They've been on the scene since 1995, and they can help you with insurance for business, transport, trades, farming and much, much more. Grab a quote now, jump online, cityrural.au. They can be your insurance pit crew.
I could go a Mose, go a Mose, go a Mose, go a Mose. You do the high bit. Go a Mose, go a Mose, go a Mose, go a Mose. What's the price, Cat?
$3.
Get some. Go a Mose.
Only $3, yeah.
Go a Mose. Go a Mose mouth-watering hot dog, $3 anytime.
What?
At OT.
Time for us now to delve into our top 5 fueled by Shell V-Power. This week, we look at 5 completely random moments from the archives. Number 5, the day that Phil Ward, gents, decided we shouldn't start this race. There's oil all over the track. He lined up on the grid and said, nah, we're not doing this. Cameron McConville and I were in commentary on this. Right about now, our jaws are on the ground saying, what the hell's going on?
Yeah, I do remember this. And look, to be honest, Phil actually had the right intentions, but the execution will probably forever go down as being not the way it should have been done. But Phil's a great guy, and you know the Aussie racing car category was his creation. So
This was the scenario where they all had to then turn around and go back, and it was an absolute disaster. This is 2014 at Winton. Touring Car Masters, Steve Mason in the Mustang in the background.
Well,
Tyre Wall 1, Mustang 0.
oh, there's a bit of damage. I hate seeing those cars with damage like that.
He's still trying to get out of
Guys.
there. He's got to press on here. It's got a drop nose, but he's pressing on here. I don't need help. I'm going to get going. But when you see that wall coming up, you know once you're on a pathway to it, you're not getting out.
Yeah, no, and you can't move that wall either, Noons. It's earth banked, as you can see there. And yeah, just those old cars. I hate seeing them get damaged like that. But lucky he didn't get collected up the back there.
This is another TCM one. This is Sydney Olympic Park in Homebush. Bill Pye, the late great Bill Pye in the Camaro. This is down at the chicane. All right, it's a little slide. That's okay. Not the end of the world. Doesn't get stuck on the tyre bundle. Press on. It'll be right. Off you go. Hang on a minute. Where is he going now? All right. Oh, no, he's fine. And then he's fine.
in the fence hard. Yeah,
In the fence. This is the corner that claimed all of them in the wet that famous year in 2010. And then he ends in the middle of the road. Not a good car park in Homebush.
No, that's a nice one. Well, the Porsche got around unscathed.
Bernie
but yeah.
Stack didn't get involved in the stack.
Oh, Formula Ford.
actually.
Formula
Here we
Ford,
go.
Gold Coast 2009, Richie Stanaway, Scott Pye. So they're into it here. They keep into each other here. Richie gets launched. Left rear of his car's cooked. And then just to finish it off, if I'm going, you're going. So they both didn't really end up with a good day
Oh, that
on the Gold
That
Coast.
was going for 3 corners, that accident.
That was a crash that took a while. But here's one we've waited for all year, 2005.
Stitch up.
Adelaide, boom.
Stitch up.
Everybody's in this, including our man Moff. That's not you.
No.
No,
But
which
the next
one's
car
Moff?
in is you.
I was in the Trend Windows machine here. And
There he is.
Just on the left
Took
of
us
the
all
screen
year,
there. Yep.
but we got there on the top 5. Moff is number 1.
Hey, brother.
Time now here on The Undercut to get stuck into the workbench, and it's our awards for 2025. Let's zip through these guys on various fields of endeavour and achievement in 2025. Super 2 Rising Star, who would you nominate? Who was the pick of the bunch there? I mean, I know Ryland Gray's ended up winning the series. He's going to drive for Dick Johnson Racing, but was there anybody else who caught your eye given the car that they were driving, their level of experience, or is it too hard to go past him?
I think it is probably too hard to go past Ryland. So, yeah, obviously won the championship. Maybe honourable mention is his teammate Lockie Dalton. I thought he really stepped up well this year. You know, pole positions. I think he won the pole position award, actually.
He did, yeah.
Might have even actually won more races than Ryland along the way in the series. But both those guys definitely went to another level this year.
Jack?
Yeah, I mean, Super 2 was like the Tickford Cup, basically. You needed to be in a Tickford car. A couple of times in practice, I thought that some of the young guns were going really well, and then I found out they actually had an extra set of tyres, so that made them look a lot better. But I think you're right, Ryland Gray did a superb job. But I am keen to see, you know, next year, obviously, who can be the pick of them. The Tickford guys will probably still have their dominance, but yeah, I think, you know, there's a few of them going into main game as well. So be interested to see who the top of that crop is.
Really good news for me in that they have made the call to press on with the current generation of car for Super 2 through to 2028 when the Gen 3 car will be introduced. Gives more time for the independent teams to use the equipment that they've got, and also for them to decide at Supercars how the Gen 3 car will be implemented. Is there a way to save a couple of dollars, to de-spec it slightly? Bit more time to get that sorted out. So that was a very good win for the year. Underdog Performer of the Year. Now, there was a few good performances that we all didn't see coming. Some of us saw them coming, but I guess the candidates here, Cameron Hill winning at the Grand Prix, James Golding's performance at Bathurst where he crossed the line first but didn't win. Job Stewart's championship debut at the Bend was impressive. Cooper Murray's effort at Bathurst was impressive. Kai Allen getting to the finals in his rookie season was impressive. Which of those is your underdog performance of the year?
Yeah, probably all of the above, really.
You can't pick them all. You can't pick
The
them
only
all.
thing I would throw in there as an honourable mention again is Aaron Cameron's qualifying performance on Saturday at Adelaide. Qualified on the front row, led the opening phase of the race. Showed, I think, in that moment that he has the ability to definitely mix it at the front of the field. So outside of the ones that you have mentioned, Noon, so I'll also add that.
Yeah, I think Kai Allen. You know, we talked about Chas Mostert and Walkinshaw's playing the finals well. I mean, Kai, really sort of scraped in after Bathurst and made it all the way to the end. So that's my tick.
Yeah, I can't go past Kai Allen. And the fact that in Adelaide, I didn't hear anyone say or even murmur, oh, if Payne was in, he'd be a better chance. Allen performed very well. He earned his spot from Sandown to make it into Adelaide. He absolutely deserved his spot. Who's one to watch, gents, in 2026? There's plenty of people who've had good seasons, bad seasons. Who have we got on the radar that we need to watch this year? For next year, I should say.
Well, yeah, I think everyone's on the radar, Noons, but I'm keen to see how the rookies go. There's
I'm
quite
with you on that.
quite a few of them, whether it be Zach Bates, Rylan Gray, Job Stewart. People that performed well in the endurance races, Jackson Walls, who's another rookie, but people that performed well in the enduros, it's like the scene out of Days of Thunder. Now go get your own car and see how you perform in front of a crowd, because it's a whole different deal when you've got to qualify, maybe start the race, things like that. So I'm keen to see who is the pick of the rookies.
Yeah, so and just to follow on the rookies, will we see a rookie make the finals like we did with Kai this year? And outside probably the obvious ones, which would, I think, you sort of your Ryan Woods, Brock Feeney's, how's Chas Mostert going to defend his title? Ones to watch for me are Brodie and Will. They're 2023 and 2024 champions. For Brodie, second year of DJR, let's say he's got all the teething problems out of the way in 2025. Next year's a year to deliver. And really for Will Brown, he needs to bounce back next year.
Yeah, he needs a big bounce back. For me, Ryan Wood is one to watch. I mean, obviously Toyota is a big move for WAU, but his back end of his season, all the things that went wrong, what could have, should have, and potentially might have been for him, if you change all that around and he has a better run next year, let's see how that unfolds. But definitely keen to keep an eye on him as he emerges as a star of supercars racing. Best livery of the year. We love a good livery. We love colours. We love stickers. Where are you going with this? You look like you've got a very easy choice here, or you're upset.
Mate, this is, if anyone else disagrees, you might not like cars the way I like them, but that LP Castrol retro livery at Sandown was not only the best livery of the year, but brings up the fact that we need to do more retros.
Yep. I totally agree with Perks in terms of bring back retro round. I thought liveries on the whole were reasonably sedate this year.
Oh, I think that's a fair point.
Really sort of jumped out at me. Outside of the LP retro at Sandown on Randall's car, I actually thought the James Courtney 2010 championship throwback that BRT did for his final event at Adelaide was not a bad livery, actually.
And not just the livery that they did with that car, but everything that they did in and around that weekend and the lead up to it for James for his full-time farewell. I thought to John and Tim Blanchard and Kate Harrington and everybody at BRT, well done. I mean, they did that perfectly in the respect that they showed James.
Celebrated him well, didn't they?
Some other teams probably could take note in the future of how that stuff should be done. I thought they did a great job.
Yep.
That
But
colour
also
cool.
teams-
But what about the Premier cars in the second half of the year? That HDT, the HRT retro flavour.
Well, I
thought that was
suppose
great.
if you had to pick one, maybe that one was maybe the best.
So the three liveries we've mentioned
all retro.
are all retros.
Yeah, well,
What does that tell you?
Race teams take note.
Do some old stuff.
Actually, and I can tell you one livery that'll be the same next year.
Red Bull.
Not Red Bull.
Monster.
Exactly. Do something different for Christ's sake.
Yeah, mix it up. They get more attention if they reverse. I know it's all about brand and they want to protect brand and all
Who
that stuff,
cares?
but mix it up, give us something that's exciting. Biggest comeback of the year. There was a few of these along the way, whether it was over the season or the individual elements. Contenders for this award, James Warburton, Roland Dane making a comeback, although officially hasn't come back till next year. But for me, it's not a person. It's a track. Queensland Raceway's return to the championship for the first time since 2019 was an absolute hit, an absolute winner. Plenty of people, great racing, well promoted, well bolted together. Proof that you can run an event successfully at a traditional racetrack.
Yeah, I mean, you've always just got to keep emphasising on the quality of the show and where the races are, and then the rest will take care of itself. The fact that Queensland Raceway out Ipswich Way, that's heartland stuff for supercars and the fans. And yeah, I would say, to have a few years off from having a race, to do what they did, full credit to the organisation led by Tony Quinn. His investment in that facility has kind of future-proofed that facility for all Queenslanders and for the rest of us to enjoy. So I would have to agree that that's the biggest comeback. But I am rapt to see James Warburton back. He's a solid performer and does a great job and loves supercars, and he will lead the way very well.
Speaking of comebacks for 2026, I've got to put a little quick grill on my undercut brothers here. Are you back for the Enduros, you two? There's been stuff written about where you're going, what's going on with you. Are you making comebacks next year? You're going to play the game again in September, October?
Well, Noons, I'm more worried about whether we're back for the undercut, if I'm
mate, no
completely
problem
honest
there.
with you.
No
but
problem there.
hopefully there's some good news coming soon, Noons. But yep, I'll be keeping my gym membership going.
Fair play. Yeah,
Just on the comeback stuff.
Yes.
I've got one.
Are you
for
trying to like change the topic
I've
here?
got one for you. Chaz Mostert come back after you basically wrote him off
here we
before the
go.
final started.
Here we go.
He went on to win the championship.
tape.
So
Check
that
the
has
tape.
to be the comeback of 2025. Noons had him buried. Was
No.
not going to be a contender.
I said I was
Takes out
worried.
the big prize.
I said I was worried about the qualifying and where he might be in the stacking on the Gold Coast. And at the time, if you might remember, Ryan Wood was in front of him on the Gold Coast.
Doesn't
before he
matter
had
now,
dramas.
Nunes.
But it doesn't matter. Chazzy is the champion. But
Now, don't let Moff
hang on,
get
don't let
away.
him get off here. Now, you have announced you're not going to be back at Tickford. Is there a home potentially for you for the Enduros next year?
As we sit here and speak and record the show, not as of yet, Noons. But
Is there potential? You want to go on though?
whether there's potential, I'm not sure, but I would like to go on. I think I could still offer something as a co-driver, but sometimes these things are out of your own control. So yeah, whether I go on or not, time will tell. But yeah, at the moment, nothing in place.
We will wait and see. Biggest news story of the year in 2025. There was all sorts of stuff that happened along the way, but I guess you've got to rewind the clock back to the start of the year. The news that everyone kind of forgot was news this year of Triple Eight going to Ford, because that happened very early in the piece. I think it was Bathurst 12-hour weekend that was announced. But you had the parity story that was ongoing, Roland Dane's return, Craig Lowndes leaving Triple Eight was, it's big ticket news after 20 years. Team 18 becoming the Chevy homologation team. Chaz drinking a beer was news because it went worldwide on socials and news services around the world. But to you, what's the biggest news story of 2025?
Well, I don't think it's the beer one. I don't know if that was news, but it's picked him up a better beer sponsorship deal. I would say Triple Eight to Ford on the basis that most of those stories get leaked on the 3RW rumour file or something like that beforehand. And if I'm right, that Will Brown and Brock Feeney only found out a day before it was announced. So
True.
no one knew. The Inner Sanctum was the only one that knew that they'd signed confidentiality agreements and everything. And the fact that it was kept, you remember Lowndes going to Ford, like that was leaked weeks in advance back 20 years ago. So now with communication and social media, for those guys to keep that news such a secret, I think was why it became a very big news story.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And I guess the other thing to throw into the mix here is the unveiling of the Toyota Supra. I mean, there were the new TV deals for supercars. They are important news stories for the health of the category and what comes next in it all. But Triple Eight to Ford, all the things that cascade from that now that have fallen from that. They take over homologation team, they take over the engine program, and then what does it mean for Chevrolet? What does it mean for the other teams? What does it mean for the other drivers? There's plenty of things that cascade down from there. Contenders for race of the year. Is there anything that can hold a candle to Bathurst? The second half of that race was epic. Is there anything else in the mix that can even rival it?
Yeah, well, I think for obvious reasons, Bathurst probably sits at the top. Thanks probably to the wet weather and the finish and how it all unfolded and everything that was going on, and probably importantly that it brought people engaged into the race that wouldn't otherwise normally be engaged.
Absolutely.
So that was a massive positive. So outside of that, I'm going to nominate race one at the Gold Coast, the first race of the finals. There was plenty going on in that race. To me, that sort of felt like a sort of mid-2010s old school supercar race where there was plenty happening. Cars were being passed, cars were getting taken out, there was drama. Chaz was on a rampage. It was just a really good, entertaining race to watch, and a race that we sort of needed to have.
Jack's probably going to nominate the 500 at the Bend here, I would have thought.
Yeah, no. That if there was a worse race of the year, Noons, the Ben 500 would have got it before the weekend started and quantified after. Unfortunately, that was a shocker, and I hope that something can be done to reinvigorate it because it's a fantastic facility. But yeah, that was a terrible race. Bathurst for me. Can't go past that.
Sydney Motorsport Park opening round, Waters, Feeney, Brown. I mean, it was a great moment. It was a great battle, but
Has anyone seen Cam Waters since then?
no.
The wheels fell off that campaign.
Tickford really did go out with a bit of a whimper there in the last few rounds, didn't they? But they will recharge and be back. And of course, the big news, I guess another big news story was that Tickford, with that ownership change and private equity coming in there, that is a contender for a pretty big size news story for that team. Driver of the year, gents. And one of the things that really caught my eye at the Gala Awards dinner on the Monday night in Adelaide was that the Driver's Driver Award has been abandoned. In the past, the drivers all vote who they deem the best driver of the year, taking into account on-track results, the team and the level that they're at, their experience, all that sort of stuff. Clearly, I would believe Brock Feeney would have won that this year. He won the other awards that were on show.
I wouldn't be so sure.
You don't think so?
No, I thought about that. Funnily enough, no, sorry to cut you off.
No,
I thought about
I'm
that
glad.
in the Sunday race when Brock got turned around. They had to come through the field. And I was thinking, well, now you work out how many friends you've got in this field.
True.
And a lot of your enemies come from jealousy, mind you. But I didn't see anyone wave him through at any point. So to me, the driver's driver is always interesting. I think Jack Smith arguably nearly won it one year because the drivers got together and wanted to, nominate someone else for a change. So it is a shame that one's been scrapped, but I'm not sure it would have gone to Brock, that one in particular.
Okay, it's good insight. Who do you feel is the driver of the year?
That's a tough one to answer because I guess we celebrate, our major victories, if you like, Bathurst, Championship. We've celebrated the dominance of Brock, but I think the way that he was able to perform and deliver on the big stage in a new format, to me, the driver of the year has to be Chaz Mostert.
I would agree.
12 years of
and that's
toiling away in the sport, being close on occasions, to finally win that championship that, he's a two-time Bathurst winner now. He adds Australian Touring Car Champion. That's what I always call it, Supercars Champion.
He still gets that trophy from Motorsport Australia.
To the list of achievements. He has to be driver of the year.
And that's not to denigrate Brock Feeney's performance
Absolutely
this
not,
year, but
no.
I think if I looked at it this way, and I had Chaz circled here as who I would nominate purely because it's about performing when it matters most. Your dad's known for winning 6 Bathurst 1000s, not how many V8 Supercar or Touring Car Championship races he won. We've got a sport in a final series now that it's a beautiful time. When football's just finished, cricket's not quite got rolling. We've got 2 months in prime time there of supercars with the finals and the endurance races. They're the grand stages, and actually it made me look up the other day. So Mostert did not finish Bathurst but still won the championship. Since Bathurst came into the championship, there's only one time that's ever happened. That was Garth Tander in 2007. Remember they had the brake dramas in the Toll HSV cars at Bathurst that year. But that was the year that the points was for the top 15. You didn't get points if you finished outside top 15. So different formats, different scenarios, different rules, different eras. But for mine, totally not to denigrate Brock Feeney's performance this year. Stunning, spectacular, pole record, all that stuff. But I think the guy of the year is the guy that performs when it matters most.
Yeah, and look, Brock Feeney statistically is the driver of the year for me. Statistically, won all the races, dominated the qualifyings, poles, and I tell you, he's a gun. Make no mistake, Brock Feeney is one hell of a race car driver, but his name's not on the trophy. Chaz Mostert has his name on the trophy. There's no fine print. There's no nothing. So the champion to me, not statistically, but Chaz Mostert, he's got his name on that trophy, so he is the driver of the year.
Everyone starts from scratch in 2026 when the points are reset to 0, and it all starts again at the Sydney 500 at the end of February. Here on The Undercut, though, next up, it's time to pull the plug. Righto, it's that time of the year that it's Christmas time is upcoming, and we have gifts, suggestions for our viewers. Jack, can you please be the magazine model here? The brand new edition of V8 Sleuth magazine, issue 1, is out now. You can get it in all good newsagents and maybe some dud ones too. But No, there's no dud ones. V8 Sleuth Superstore, where you can grab a copy as well. 104 pages. The Green-Eyed Monster is featured in there. Craig
Big moment
Lowndes.
for you, Noons, to finally have it in stores.
It is. It is. This has been a long time in the plotting and planning over the years, but it's a real thing. And you know what happens now? You've got to do issue 2.
What about the male model from Mudgee in there too? I mean, Sleuth in there
Hey,
with
get
the
the merch as
sleuth,
well.
the sleuth merch. Yeah,
Plenty of-
get around
Plenty of
that.
merch as well.
Got a scoop-
Who let these blokes loose this
Have
year?
we got a scoop for issue 2, or we can't reveal
I
that?
think we should tell the world, issue 2, that the cover car for the next issue is a very special, important car, Jack, and it might have a livery that looks a little bit like that cap on the desk.
Oh yes, is it my news to reveal?
You
Noons?
can reveal. You reveal.
Yeah, Noons did tell me that the cover car for the second edition of the V8 Sleuth magazine is going to be the 1993 Bathurst winner and the restored nature and appearance of that car. So we're stoked for that, and I can't wait for Noons to send me a copy.
We've got to finish it first, but we'll get there. We'll get there. You can have one of these ones to get you started. John Bowe, legend of the game, Hall of Famer. The new book, Driven, is out now. It's just been released. You can grab your copy from online on the website. For those who've pre-ordered it in the months ahead, they have been dispatched this week out to you to your post boxes, so keep your eyes on those ones. Something also that ran in Adelaide was a nice tribute that Ford put together with these Alan Moffat stickers. These are some images from our files that we provided to Ford. They ran on all the supercars in Adelaide, and there was such interest from the fan base that now they're going to be produced with proceeds to Dementia Australia out of that. So looks the part. 77 Falcon.
76 there, Noons.
XB. It's an XB early 77 before it went to XC for the Enduros. Nicely well there by you. Love the format. Love you keeping us honest. Something else that's of interest too, if you're a Ford fan, if you jump online between December 11 and 16 to the Grays online website, grays.com, remember this thing? This is the Andrew Bagnall, Pierre Dieudonné, Gulliver's Travels Group A Ford Sierra RS500 Cosworth. It raced at Bathurst in '88. It's been fully restored. It's up for auction. It's a cracking piece of Group A history. It spent some time as a rally car after it raced with Bagnall in Group A racing in period, but it's been beautifully restored. It is available for auction. Perfect car to go. Historic racing, Moff.
What did you say one of the co-drivers' names was?
Pierre Dieudonné.
Say that quickly 3 times.
Pierre Dieudonné, Pierre Dieudonné, Pierre Dieudonné.
Well played.
Well, former Alan Moffat racing driver, Pierre Dieudonné, drove the ANZ cars up at Bathurst in the years that
What
followed.
about going 3 ways in a V8 Sleuth undercut Sierra?
Ooh, there's something here. Maybe we could crowdfund this too.
That's before knowing the reserve.
I
But
was going to say, there is plenty of white space to put some stickers on that car if we needed to do a bit of a tax write-off along the way, just quietly there. Jack, Perkins Engineering online store. Those caps have been absolute zingers. You've just got new stock in.
Yep.
And have you got any left? Or have they gone straight out the
they're
door?
flying out the door, Noons, but there are a few left before Christmas. Moff, that one is yours. You can walk out with that
very
one.
much.
So security don't grab him on the way out. But yeah, thanks to everyone that supported us on that. Really cool, and it looks great. So now I have to think of another style hat for next year, Noons.
I'm sure you'll be able to come up with something along the way. Hey, a big thank you too. We've got one little show to go for the rest of the year with a Q&A episode, but a big thank you to Liza Shaw and to Nick at Viva and Shell V-Power, who've been amazing supporters of this show this year, who've believed in the concept right from the very start. Don't forget too, the Shell Motorsport collection. All the cars have been released. You can now grab them at your Shell Ready Expression, Shell OTR. The boys here are going to try to pinch them off the desk at the end of this show. Andrew Bender and his team at City Rural Insurance, thank you for your support. Bob Grieve and the whole team here at Studio B, who've given us a home throughout 2025. Mark Walker will hate us thanking him.
Oh, the big Texan.
The big
behind
Texan, the
behind
producer who's done a
screens.
super job this year to help bring you this show. Garth Tander came in and joined us after his Bathurst victory as well. And to you two boys, we really appreciate you coming along for the drive this year.
Thank you, Noons.
Yeah.
Thanks for having us involved.
Thanks for
We'll
having us,
do it
Noons.
all again in 2026. We're out of time now on The Undercut for another week. We'll catch you next year. But next week, we'll have a very special Q&A episode. You sent the questions. We'll give the answers. Stay tuned for that. Until then, though, it's bye for now from here on The Undercut.